Oh, back.
We are
Certainly
back.
are.
So this week's 100X podcast was about overcoming resistance,
Yep.
which linked onto the back of resistance to change when it was the overall theme.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you've been doing your own work again, haven't you?
Certainly have. When we talk about overcoming resistance, we've got barriers, hurdles, and gaps. And I was wanted to jump straight in with this one and ask you two guys, what type of resistance have you faced currently within your team
Around change.
around change? Yeah.
Who's going? What's going to
Yeah,
start?
yeah. Good question. I think I can jump in and then you can help me out. I think personal experience, what we've faced in our team is, I think we mentioned this on a previous podcast, prohibition and inhibition.
Yep.
Limited belief sometimes in people can be resistance. We've got prohibition where we know there's something physically stopping something.
Like a proper barrier. So, for
Like a
example,
proper barrier.
I think when I'm teaching that one, I'll explain it to someone. I always like to use a prohibition. It's a bit like when the government puts us in lockdown. We weren't allowed to leave.
No.
Yeah.
So look at your business around change. Your business was all delivered around doing one-to-one coaching, wasn't it?
Yeah. And face-to-face interaction, that got stopped overnight, didn't it?
Yeah.
So that is a prohibition.
That's a
Got that
prohibition.
one? He's
I
nailed
got
it,
that.
Yeah.
Well done.
Got that. That's a barrier, something that we can't change.
So an inhibition then, I'm going to use you on this model again, is something you don't believe you can do, a limiting belief. So if you think about it, do you remember that conversation me and you had on, I think it was Boxing Day, all them years ago, when you had to do some training and you give me a woe me story about qualifying
Yeah.
as a teacher?
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
So explain. So for someone not understanding what an inhibition is, what would I explain that to them? That's
So what happened was, it was 3.5 years ago. I left school. I didn't have no qualifications.
you didn't leave
at all.
school 3.5 years ago.
No, I didn't. When I left, when I left school 3.5. When I left school, go on, you've thrown me off.
How many decades?
When I left school, 85,
We're not having that, are we?
1985.
85 decades.
1985 I left school, right?
7 years ago.
So in 1985, I left school with no qualifications
Yeah.
whatsoever. In 2020 or late 2019, I had to gain a teaching qualification. So from not having any qualifications to actually have to gain a teaching qualification, to me, that was a massive barrier.
Yeah.
It was something that I didn't believe that I could achieve.
Yeah.
And I'd gone and qualified to be a mental health first aid tutor, and I scored 100% with that. But I didn't know, to actually forward the business, to forward my career, I had to gain this teaching qualification. I was speaking to Leon, I just went, I can't do it. Leon said, you got two options. You either follow your passion, follow your dream, or you go and get a job. Because I had 32 years experience in the industry I was in, people were ringing me up. But I didn't want to go back into that industry. I wanted to follow my passion. So I actually stuck it and passed. But without that, maybe that warmy conversation, why I can't do this, I've got no to actually gaining the teaching. And may I say, for all teachers, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was,
Yeah.
I
You
put
got
my own
past
barriers in place, but I stuck to it, followed my passion, followed my dream, and the rest is history.
I think that's a great example, Paul. I think linking into that, though, I think that links into a question I was going to ask earlier on that is, are there any underlying emotions? But we've picked up on that, really. You were scared, aren't you?
I was scared, yeah. I was scared of failure. I'd been 32 years in control of what I did. The industry I was in, I knew it like the back of my hand. I came out, I was like a fish out of water. And to actually learn something new, I was frightened. I was full of fear. And I was full of failure because there was a lot on the back of it. When you're grown up, there's your livelihood, there's your mortgages and everything. So, yeah, massive. I had loads of underlying emotions, self-doubt, everything. Yeah.
Linking into that, I think there's some areas you could maybe share on that as well, resistance to change. I just remember giving you a challenge where you tickets. I said you can do one ticket a day.
Yeah.
So make sure you choose a good one.
Yeah. It's
What emotions did you go through there?
Yeah, same thing. Same as Paul. It's like, although I'm in the same industry and I was just doing a particular role in the same industry, it was a complete change from what I'd done for the past 15 years. So I had all those feelings like you did. Well, I've always done this. How can I do something else? It's going to be complete mind shift from what I'm doing now. I can't do that. And there's all these inhibitions that I put my own barriers in the way. There was no prohibitions. There was nothing physically stopping me from doing it. There was nothing telling me that I couldn't do it. It was just myself. But once you get past them emotions like you did, you find a path, you get past that resistance. But I think yeah, it's just finding a way to do it. And a lot of people have inhibitions, and you're going to get that in every team. It's always sort of help them get past that.
I think adding into that though, and we've had these conversations through a load of times, is we all have prohibitions. We all have that little voice that tells us we can't do something.
Yeah.
I remember being on a walk with you. I remember being at tens, and I've said to you, I've had prohibitions where I don't believe I can do it on public speaking and things like that. And I remember you guys going, really? And I think everyone suffers from it. And I think the key to that is calling them fears out, identifying them emotions in it. And again, back to that point, like I always say, making sure you've got a great group of people around you who can support and equally challenge you. So, like I was saying to you in that sense, I'd helped you map out what was needed, what was the next steps. And I think linking back into the last session we did in terms of resist the barriers and the vision, I suppose,
And the vision,
the vision and the next steps. I knew what the next steps for you was, and it was always to do the teacher qualification. I'd mapped it all out, and you'd actually mapped it out. You just hadn't thought about it.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting with yourself was you got that far into it and you invested that much time. You had the way it had been set up was you had no other option.
Yeah, another option to keep going. No other option to keep going. Yeah, and you're right. And I think it's brilliant where you said you have good people around you, because at that moment in time, I need a lot of good people around me. And you have to as well. You have to be mindful of who you speak to in them situations.
Yeah.
Because you've got challenge and you want support, but you also need challenging as well.
Yeah.
Because some of the people that was closest to me was probably the wrong people to speak to at the time, because they was portraying their fears back onto me.
Yeah. No, that's it. Yeah, I love that. I'll jump in with the next one. So overcoming resistance, there's always going to be potential areas of disagreement within a team. So how can we identify them?
Good question. I can help with that. I think skills gaps are always an easy one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Is there any skills gaps? Is there any knowledge gaps?
Yeah.
Is there any process gaps? I think when you look at that, I always remember when we started working together, changing the way the desk worked. Traditionally, it used to be around when the technology goes wrong, whether it's our time to step in and shine in it. That was traditionally it.
Yeah.
But we believed that there was more that we could offer customers. And I remember, obviously, I was a customer at one point. I said, we need to start categorizing. Is it a skills gap? Is it a knowledge gap? Is it a process gap? Just talking through that at the time, because you'd not seen it that way. What did that make you think?
It was brilliant. It's a complete change to the way we used to operate. Sometimes we'd go down a path of trying to fix a problem that couldn't be fixed because a particular product we was using wasn't capable of doing it. So it just helped us. So like we do projects for a particular product that we sell. Like everything, a big project and a big change, you get resistance coming back where a customer may come back and say, look, it can't do this, it can't do that, I've got a problem with this. We split them into areas, didn't we? So we did knowledge gap, process gap, and what's the last one?
Knowledge gap, process gap, and I think it was product gap on it.
Product gap, that was it, yeah. So the product doesn't particularly do
in
that
same
task.
way.
And it was categorising them into different areas, wasn't it? And then choosing the right person for that particular task.
And also, I think being upfront and seeking, I always remember, and I've got Scott to credit for this, it's difficult in technology. When you're making a change, a new piece of technology comes along and it can do loads of amazing things.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the process that you're trying to build, what someone's trying to build, one of the questions that Scott taught me was, does your current product do that?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's no, the current product doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Because you want to ask that question and clarify it.
Yeah.
You go off down a rabbit hole trying to make the new product do it when the old product never did it in the first place.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think in answering your question there, Dean, I think it's seeking feedback.
Yeah.
Looking for, like you mentioned, product gaps, skills gaps, process gaps.
Yeah.
I think we follow Traction in the business, don't we? Gino Wickman's Traction. If anyone listening to this, I urge him to read the books, follow it. I think he has Traction and Get a Grip. And one of the tools he has is, I'm trying to think of the name of the tool. I've got it here. What's the name of it? GWC, Get It, Want It, Capacity.
Yeah.
I think it's understanding when you're going to make a change, you need different people in your steering group or in your group to help support it. Even if it's a personal change. What we were talking about, you was making a change, but you had people to go to mentor you in terms of actually giving you the skills.
Yeah.
And you had someone to mentor you when, little Paul was getting out of hand.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
And I think the challenge, what we've got to ask is, the three questions is, get it. So when we look at get it, is do all the neurons in your brain connect when you explain what the job needs to be done? So for yourself, I remember asking you that question around being a teacher. Now, you understood it, you got it, didn't know how to do it, you didn't have the capacity to do it at that point.
No,
Got it, right? You understood what you needed to do.
I needed to get there.
just
I
have the
just didn't-
skills.
Yeah, I
have the
didn't
skills,
have the skills to get there.
And you didn't know
Yeah.
where to get the skills from, did
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
And then you didn't know the ins and outs of that process, neither did you?
No.
So that was a challenge for you.
Oh, totally. And I had to sit and like study. I think the most important thing, the crucial thing, is being able to ask the right people as well.
Yeah.
The right people who have got the knowledge, could guide me. Whereas you have to get over yourself sometimes, and you haven't got everything figured out, and you have to ask the right people. And sometimes you think, I can't really ask that because it might sound stupid. No, just go out and ask them, because the support you get back is absolutely fantastic. And you've got to know the process in your mind, haven't you? And if you don't really know it, ask.
No, but
Yeah.
on that, they'll get it. It's always a bad thing because it might be like we've been talking about, a knowledge gap, a process
Yeah.
gap,
Yeah.
a product gap, around that thing. So
Yeah.
get it. So it's a first one. We all understand that one.
Yeah.
Want it. Now, this is a key question, right? Because it's all right not to get it because you might not have the right process, might not have the training. That's okay. But want it. Are you willing to put the effort in to want it? Do you really
Yeah.
deeply want it? Are you going to put the training, put the effort in? Do you get up every morning really wanting to wish you was doing that process, that job, that role? So I think that's a key one.
Yeah.
And sometimes people get it, and have got the ability to do it, but they just don't want it.
Don't want it enough.
Don't want to
Not
know.
hungry enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So back to you in that sense, you was hungry enough, weren't you? You wanted it.
Oh, I wanted it. I was desperate for it. So I'd put anything in. Hence, working on Boxing Day when everybody else was celebrating Christmas, I was doing 10 hours.
Because you knew it's the only time in your calendar you could get that training done.
I needed to get it done.
So get it, want it, all that making sense.
Yeah.
And the third one is capacity, and I think this is a key one, right? Because, and it's a challenge in this one, but do you have the mental, physical, spiritual, and time and knowledge to do the job? The capacity to do it. Let's take what you was doing there is you had the time. I believe you had the capacity to do it because I was challenging you using this framework.
Yeah.
But sometimes some people just haven't got the capacity. A big challenge for me, like we always talk about, I'm dyslexic. So there's certain things, if I have to proofread and sign off final piece of work, with the best will, I can want it, I can get it.
Yeah.
I physically don't have the capacity to do that piece of work. So I
Yeah.
have to have people doing final proofing for me and final bits. So there comes a point where some people with the best will in the world just don't have the capacity to do a particular thing that's done. Does
Yeah.
that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah,
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Any examples for yourself on that?
No, this is it. We've back to our team. We've had some great engineers in the past where really want the role. They've got great attitudes, but sometimes they just not got the capacity to take on the responsibilities of the job. And it's these. We've run by these through 3 rules for a few years now, and it's always helped us. And it's just sometimes it's like certain tasks we've looked at backfilling certain roles before when they actually they've got they want it. They get it, but they've not got the capacity. So actually, they might be better off suited in a different role. So let's see if they want to do that role and put them somewhere different, and then
Yeah.
backfill that role with somebody else. So it's a good little tool. We need some documentation on that. Actually, it'd be nice to share out to
The team.
yeah.
No, I think on that, I think what's interesting on that though, I think linking to a question I had, and I'm going to fast track 'cause I know you had another question to ask, but I think
Yeah.
that I'm going to wrap up into 2 really. In that, we was going to ask about what sort of factors can impede progress on a project, and you was going to talk about buying, the importance of buying.
Yep.
But I think for me, the buying bit really buys into the want it, the want it.
Yeah, do
Yeah.
they want it?
Would you agree?
Yeah,
Yeah, because if
yeah.
they want it, they'll buy in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that helps that. And I think what I was going to ask was, what sort of strategies can we use to ensure everyone's voice is heard? Because I think they get it, they want it, the capacity, that's all cool. But I think what we've got to really talk about in terms of overcoming resistance is making it safe for our team and our
Yeah.
staff. And for me, Giant, the platform, is just incredible. And the reason why I think it's incredible is it's a simple tool that makes sure every voice is heard.
Yeah.
And it talks about different voice orders. So it talks
Yeah.
about, we've got a creative thinker, it talks about we have guardians,
Nurturers.
nurturers, pioneers, connected, all different voices. And us 3 epitomise the different voices.
They've
and
all
different
got a role
orders.
to play, haven't they?
Yeah, all got a role to play. And I think for me, it's making sure you have got a strategy so that the loudest voices are always heard.
Yeah.
We talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want to, Will, in terms of someone on that?
Like back to I think we mentioned this in the last podcast, the 4 helpful lists, that it gives people a voice to stand out and get something that helps us we get things on paper and we go through the 4 helpful lists. But like another example, so I've just been working on trying to simplify our project templates and the way we deliver projects. I went around the team for everybody that's physically involved. And when I say physically involved, I mean delivering the project hands-on. What I did was I missed out an important part. Was there's a task inside this project which needs some back-end systems configuring. I'd missed that person out completely, not thinking that he needed to be involved.
But you were saving him time.
Thought I was saving him time. Yeah, I just thought, oh, it's not a big deal. But anyway, I brought it to a meeting and just called out and said, look, this is what I'm doing. He went, well, actually, why haven't you included me? Because I need this and this to win. And it's fair, it was one of the best meetings we had.
Was it?
Yeah, it was fantastic, and to help things move forward. And that's all just by collaborating on things like this. And it's like, if you don't involve the right people and get their voices heard, you can miss crucial bits of information.
And like you said, if you'd have missed that person out, not only would you missed it, but it might have took you longer
Well,
as well.
it would have. It took what I looked at as a small task was far from a small task, but I needed the right person to tell me that did this particular piece of work. Actually, you've missed this and this. You know,
That's a
this is
great
why.
example, innit?
Yes,
Great example.
everybody's voices are just as important as the next.
And I think it boils onto this real simple. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you got to go as a team. And I think
Yeah.
the challenge with that is we have to slow down to speed up. And it takes time with the voices. It takes time understanding people. But I think to have true diversity and true collaboration, you need to have different people. And I think you can never underestimate the power. And I've talked about on multiple podcasts when I went and saw the Red Arrows, the way they gave feedback, the way they took it on board. I think if you can make it safe for people to give feedback, you can use tools like we mentioned the 4 Helpful Lists.
Yeah.
We mentioned this little tool, Get It, Want It, Capacity.
Yeah.
Simple tool you can call out and you can say, do you get it? And part of that, do you get it? Is it a documented process?
Yeah.
And I think the want it is an easy one. You can measure that with the want it and capacity. But I think it's also about overcoming resistance. It's something that we've got on the bottom of our processes, isn't they?
Yeah.
What is it?
Oh yeah. So we have basically the last person to read that process has gone through it and used it, so they're responsible for checking that process was right. Or not necessarily right, but actually there's a section at the bottom which just says, is the process true? Is there anything you can do to improve that process? So that the next person that's reading it and working the way through it is also responsible for making sure it's correct, and if not, improving it. So
Yeah.
we're always continuously
That's great,
improving
that,
what
innit?
we're working.
Yeah, and the way we word it, I think it's something, it says something along the lines of, you are responsible for making sure that the customer sees what you're doing as a success.
Yeah.
Making sure the customer's happy in what you're doing, right? But if you feel this process is in allowing that to happen, inhibit it, fix the pain, I mean, you're responsible for bringing this process back to the manager who signed it off and changing it and saying,
Yeah.
I know a better way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the challenge is when we talk about overcoming resistance, a number of times I've been in an organisation and I've worked and I'm following a process, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
My voice isn't valued because I'm just a cog in a machine.
Yeah.
We don't want to change it. Whereas actually, if we can empower our people to change processes and look at it differently, that's the way we're going to drive change, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Totally agree.
It's like I said, I can imagine these in a lot of places, a lot of organisations where people are following a process from A to Z, for example, and there maybe is things wrong. They're like, well, it's wrong. I'm not doing it. I'll just leave it. Where we're trying to empower people, like Leon said, to make the right decisions and fix and build these processes collectively.
If they find one part of the process that can be improved,
Yeah.
and you take that on board, one, they're going to feel appreciated, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they're not going to be frightened to do that in the future.
Well,
and
exactly. yeah.
it enhances the business, doesn't it?
And I think where I'm going to wrap up on this one is what we've got to do is a hurdle to someone or a barrier to someone might not be to somebody else. And
Yeah.
what we've got to be prepared to do is prepared to reach out. Easy for me because I'm a connector. I love to reach out. I've got a best mate who's done something everywhere.
Yeah.
I like that. I see everyone as my best mate. But not everyone's as open to change. So Guardians especially are open to the change on that.
Yeah.
And they're not always the best person to maybe reach out and connect. And a nurturer might be a little bit scared of how that might affect the team. But it's empowering maybe a connector to go do the initial steps. Bring a Guardian in to then fault find them steps.
Yeah.
Bring a nurturer in to see how we're going to communicate that
Yeah.
to the team and look at it in from all different angles to make sure that you get, let's take the 5 voices, we get five versions of doing that. So it's the best version it can be.
Yeah.
So that's it from me, unless anyone's got out else. It was
No,
just
that's
a short,
great.
short and sharp on
No,
this
I like
week.
this one.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. And yeah, takeaway for me was the hurdle bit. I work with people that put hurdles in my day every day, and I think my takeaway is I need to. So a hurdle, something you can jump over, but it takes time and energy and effort. I can be asking better questions to stop these hurdles coming in my way. So that's my take on
Well,
from
I
today.
like that one.
But yourself?
Are the gaps? If I've got any gaps, I always ask now when I get them. if it's either a new website or improve the website or do things like that. I was looking at that today, and I've actually put things in place after doing this today that I saw a few gaps that I needed, and I ain't got the skills to do them. So
You haven't got the
I
capacity,
ain't got the capacity to do it, and
but you get it, and you want it.
I've get it, and I want it. So I'll get somebody to do that for me, which together we'll get it done.
I love that. And I think for me, mine is just over communicating again, because I mean, like Dean just mentioned there, he's mentioned the get it, want it capacity tool. We need to share that more with the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great tool.
It's a great tool, and we'll bring that up on our next level 10, just to everyone understands it and empower them. So, yeah, great one today. So that's Leon checking out.
Paul checking out.
Dean, check it out.